As anime fans, I think Genshiken might be the most relatable story we can experience because its characters are just like most of us. Genshiken is a college activity club, and this is a multi-character narrative following the free time of its members. While stories like this are usually heavy on comedy, Genshiken presents a more balanced approach by offering drama, romance, and steady character development. I always consider Genshiken to be the anti-Welcome to the NHK. As you may know, I love Welcome to the NHK because it takes a dark look into real-life social and psychological problems that some anime fans may find themselves familiar with. Genshiken also respectfully depicts the realistic struggles of anime fans, but from a much more positive perspective. I find it to be a feel-good anime that reassures you that everything's going to be okay. It may be a bit daunting if you're new to Genshiken due to its inconsistent licensing and numerous releases making things confusing. Fear not, because I made this graphic which should clear everything up. Feel free to pause the video and take a closer look. In today's spoiler-free review, I'll be covering everything you see here. I'll begin by giving a brief overview of the story they all share, then break it down a bit further to discuss the pros and cons of each series and version, including quick reviews of its two spin-offs. Of course, I could say I'm nothing if not thorough, but that would be a lie. The truth is, sometimes I enjoy a story enough to turn over every stone, and this is one of those cases. After all, I can't have you thinking I'll be this thorough in every anime review. Starting off with today's review, let's take a closer look at the overall story of Genshiken. While there is no central main character, I appreciated how they allotted nearly equal screen time to most of its members. It's as if the story was created with relatability in mind because everyone is bound to favor different characters. In addition to their varying interests which keep their activities fresh, most of these characters have complex personalities that include internal and external struggles as well as skills and future goals. Regarding character development, the plot spans about 5 years, so I'd say almost everyone gets developed, though some more than others. Hobbies are a big part of Genshiken, and I enjoyed watching nearly all of their group activities. Together, they watch anime, read manga, play video games, cosplay, go shopping, build Gundam model kits, and even create their own manga to sell at anime conventions. In addition to group activities, many of these characters have their own individual hobbies such as tailoring and playing visual novels. Much of the enjoyment and comedic relief stems from their individual personalities complementing one another or in some cases clashing. Even mundane events such as two people in a room silently reading manga can become entertaining. For example, there was one episode where Madarame and Saki were alone reading manga. He notices a hair sticking out of her nose and tries to find the best way to tell her by mentally analyzing his options in the style of visual novel dialogue sequences. When I think of Genshiken's atmosphere and overall mood, I generally describe it as wholesome, though as you'd expect, these personalities tend to clash from time to time, sparking arguments. I appreciated how mature most of these characters are. Everyone tries to be empathetic towards the emotions of their friends, but of course, this empathy is limited by their capacity to pick up on these social cues. Social limitations are a substantial obstacle within Genshiken, as characters occasionally struggle to understand each other's emotions or express their own. Additionally, many of them may find it incredibly difficult to transition into the real world after graduating. Some may even find this to be a soul-crushing ordeal. While I appreciated its balance and depth by depicting these negative emotions, I also appreciated their tact in dealing with these issues in a wholesome manner. While Genshiken began as a somewhat awkward small group, I admire how it becomes a tightly knit group of friends who are always there for each other, even if their personalities typically clash. As a result, I consider the Genshiken group to be the ideal representation of what an anime club should be. I'd even go as far as saying that it's almost perfect. For example, its members have different interests but rarely argue about trivial things such as their tastes. Additionally, there are attractive single women in the group, but there's never any drama or posturing from guys trying to get their attention, or at the very least, the official Genshiken members. Provisional members, on the other hand, can get a little annoying, but they're not around for long. Additionally, the male-to-female ratio is almost equal, so naturally relationships occasionally flourish. While I don't agree with all of their choices or all of the romance arcs, I found most of them to be enjoyable due to the characters' chemistry. Even relationships I thought wouldn't work still held a purpose within the narrative. For example, Saki and Kosuka. Saki joined Genshiken due to her interest in Kosuka. You may wonder why they don't just spend time together outside of the club. Despite Kosuga's stylish appearance, he's actually a hardcore anime otaku and hardly pays Saki any attention. I felt like their dynamic was an ironic take on the societal norms of otaku being ignored by attractive women.
Would you rather have a girlfriend who's into playing those games with you?
It's really not that big a deal, and you are the way you are, so I don't mind at all.
But to be honest, I feel miserable right now. He doesn't look at me at all, either. Ah!
Oh, sorry. TV time.
You mean anime? Oh.
Regardless of anime or manga, the story of Genshiken will be a roller coaster of emotions as we vicariously experience all of the ups and downs their lives have to offer. Personally, I find Genshiken to be one of those shows I can watch whenever I'm feeling overworked and emotionally depleted. It warms my heart and just makes me feel human again. Due to Genshiken's large cast who's gradually introduced, I won't talk about everyone because I consider getting to know some of the later characters to be part of the enjoyment, and I don't want to ruin that. However, I want to talk about my 3 favorite characters from the beginning of the original series. Sasahara loves anime, but his social life is practically barren due to his social anxiety, lack of confidence, and personal identity issues regarding his hobbies. He finds it difficult to fit in with any crowd, but eventually settles on Genshiken due to its relaxed and friendly atmosphere. After becoming friends with the other club members, he is reassured that it's okay to be a die-hard anime fan and begins to openly embrace his hobbies. I found Madarame to be my favorite character. While he may be a great leader for Genshiken, he struggles to organize his personal life. He lives by the motto, buy now, think later, and splurges all of his money on anime merchandise, which forces him to live as frugally as possible when it comes to his essentials. Madarame has no future plans or goals in life. He only lives for the moment. I suspect the reason for this being that he is incredibly lonely and depressed, and his hobbies are his only source of joy in life. Although he has friends in Genshiken, I still see him as somewhat of an outsider, a bystander who watches everyone else evolve while he stagnates. Additionally, he tends to take an analytical approach to anime, and others find this quite annoying. Some may not understand my reasoning for favoring Madarame, but I consider him to have a ton of depth, even if I'm reading between the lines to see some of it. While you're probably going to hate Saki, I actually really like her. Saki is known for hating anime fans and pretty much anything to do with anime. Ironically, she becomes attracted to Kosuga, but he's probably a bigger anime otaku than Madarame. Even more ironic, Saki herself could be considered a fashion otaku. Her shopping habits mirror Madarame's, and her main attraction to Kosuga is his style. In fact, she struggles with everything else to do with him because he just ignores her existence unless there's nothing better to do. You may call her shallow, and that's not an incorrect observation, but Saki is actually very emotional, and there's a lot of depth to her as she begins developing. I'd like to say more regarding Saki, but I will consider that to be a spoiler, so I'll just keep it to myself. Briefly, regarding Genshiken's other members, I've come to love them all except for the Nidaime exclusive characters. There are plenty more which I haven't named, but half of them have just as much depth and development as the aforementioned trio, and most of the others come close. They're all interesting, but not everyone is equally developed. Thankfully, there are only 2 comedic relief characters throughout the entire anime series, because I know some anime go a bit overboard with that. Going deeper into the individual versions of Genshiken, let's take a closer look at the anime and manga of the first series. I have a few problems with the anime adaptation. Regarding its art, the anime character designs don't look great, but at the same time, I kinda like it. I consider Genshiken to be a laid-back, relaxed show, and there's just something about the art that's nostalgic to me. Maybe that's because I've seen the anime 5 times, who knows. On the other hand, the manga looks outstanding. The character designs are much more detailed. I love the background art as well. The mangaka meticulously detailed the rooms with many items and anime references. An additional effect of the superior art is that the emotional scenes hit a lot harder. I remember there was one chapter that just brought me to tears. It was utterly silent and showed flashbacks. I could have just flipped through it in 5 seconds, but the way that it was planned out had the perfect effect of making me think back on other events within the manga. In contrast, the same anime scene made it feel like a cheap flashback. However, I will admit that this is possibly the result of rewatching the anime several times and only reading the manga once. Maybe I'm just desensitized to it. The manga is filled with countless anime references, not just on the walls, but its characters often discuss real-life anime. For example, one of the comedic relief characters, Sue, is like the anime version of Bumblebee from the Bayformers movies because her only means of dialogue are repeating anime quotes. In the manga, these quotes made perfect sense, but in the anime, they were altered to sound like things that might be anime references instead. The icing on the cake for the manga is its superior ending. The anime just glanced over an entire romance arc and omitted several other scenes that I felt were emotional heavy hitters. For this reason, I consider the anime adaptation to have a filler or non-canon ending considering how many powerful scenes were left on the cutting room floor. While they both go in the same direction, I felt the anime totally missed the point. It's as if I spotted aliens on my way to the store, but all I had to say about my trip were how bad the selections of onions were. Although the manga has a much more detailed and emotional ending, the anime ending is still really good. Although I absolutely love the anime and manga versions of the first Genshiken series, the manga is the clear winner. I give the manga of the first Genshiken series a 10 out of 10, while I only give the anime an 8.5, which is still a really good score. If you read anime and manga, then you owe it to yourself to start with the manga first. You don't even really need to watch the anime, but it is good. If you don't have any interest in reading the manga, you'll still enjoy the anime. However, Genshiken was the first manga I ever collected, so it's safe to say that I also had no interest in reading manga prior to Genshiken either, so I think it's still worth a try. Next, let's take a closer look at Genshiken Nidaime. Interestingly, the first series of Genshiken is only 9 volumes adapted into 27 episodes, but Nidaime is 12 volumes adapted into 14 episodes. As a result, there's a lot that's left out from the anime. In fact, there's a crucial final arc spanning several volumes that is totally omitted in the anime. Some would consider the anime and manga of Nidaime to be optional because the content changes drastically and there's already a satisfying stopping point at the end of the original series, and I can agree. In some of the final arcs of the original series, the Genshiken members create a manga. During these arcs, some of the women members reveal their fantasies about seeing their straight male club members hook up with each other, and they even begin drawing it. Some people found this to be a bit uncomfortable. However, I found it to be a bit of ironic humor. Unfortunately, Nidaime pushes the envelope so far in that direction that it changes the entire meaning of the show, in my opinion. Previously, it was a wholesome experience revolving around a tightly knit group of friends who rightfully have their own fetishes. Nidaime introduces so many new characters while simultaneously delving deeper into their boys' love obsession. It's possible to feel lost and just drop the anime. In addition to the jarring transition, many of the members of the old club are less active. I really like the character of Ogiway, who's introduced in the latter half of the original series. Although she's one of the newer characters, she seems to have developed off-screen in between series. Unfortunately, this left me feeling that she had lost almost all of her personality because what's left is just a shell of her former self. They opened up to the possibility that there would be a little bit of drama resulting from the progression of the events during the final arc of the original series. Unfortunately, they never went anywhere with it because she's basically a side character now, maybe even tertiary. Of all of the original club members, Madarame receives the most screen time in development in the latter half of Nidaime. Although he is my favorite character, I wasn't happy with the new arc surrounding him. It's as if Genshiken became too perverse and fell off the deep end, becoming self-parody while trying to alter the characterization of Madarame to justify it. Two wrongs don't make a right. However, I found that episode 11 of Nidaime singularly justifies my time investment because it tied up loose ends for Madarame that I've been wondering about since the midway point of the original series. If you've decided that Nidaime isn't for you, then I recommend just watching episode 11 by itself, especially if you like the character of Madarame. Additionally, some could consider the new main character of Nidaime to be Hato, a trans character. While Genshiken remains a series that contains a fair amount of humor, I felt that they leaned a little too far into the realm of comedy here. I thought Hato had a sad backstory that really made me empathize with the character. Unfortunately, that was just a segment of one episode. The rest is just humor and bullying. To me, Nidaime just screams potential, but they chose to turn it into self-parody, especially in the manga. The Nidaime anime has a filler ending, which I don't particularly like, but at least it quickly gets to the point. On the other hand, the manga drags it out for several volumes, making it a visual novel / Kujibiki Unbalanced meta-reference. It essentially becomes a giant dating game, and while I agree with its overall results, its execution and follow-through left much to be desired. In fact, I was so disappointed with its ending that I messaged the mangaka Kyo Shimoku on Twitter asking if he had plans to continue the series. Sadly, his response was no. The conclusion of the original series had several volumes thickly layering on character development, romance, drama, and sentiment. Nidaime gives us a dating game, and the last 2 pages feature a comedic relief character playing with the gut of a serious character who sadly never received her fair share of development. Genshiken Nidaime is loaded with missed opportunities for character development, but they pack it with so many characters that one girl never even receives characterization. I don't even know why she's here. She's just taking up space. I'm not sure exactly why Nidaime is so different from the original series. I could probably ask him on Twitter, but I'm not sure how to word it without sounding insulting because he might not speak English well. Either way, it's obvious that there was a change in motivation somewhere along the line, considering Nidaime began several years after the original series. I give Genshiken Nidaime, the anime and manga, both a 7 out of 10. Although the endings are different, I equally dislike them both, and the only real positives I can say are that I love the contents of episode 11, and I thought Hato's backstory was a nice bit of development. If you're interested in Genshiken, I consider Nidaime optional, but episode 11 is mandatory, because I thought it was really good. Moving on to our next segment, let's take a look at Kujibiki Unbalanced, the anime they watch within the original Genshiken series. There are 3 different releases of Kujibiki. One is a 3-episode OVA, which is the closest to what we see in the anime. This was released a few months after the original anime began. A few years later, the manga and 12-episode series were created and share a few of the same characters and similar plotline. In a nutshell, Kujibiki is a parody anime that's filled with all sorts of satire, tropes, and character archetypes. It just has fun with everything and isn't meant to be taken seriously. The general plot of all Kujibiki Unbalanced follows Chihiro, a teenage boy with the magical power of terrible luck. However, he's known to have a glimmer of incredibly good fortune on rare occasions. Kujibiki is set within the most prestigious school in the world, where significant events are decided by luck, and Chihiro manages to win the drawing, electing him to become the next year's student council president. This throws him into a series of trials given by the current president that push him and his new partners to their limits. I enjoyed Kujibiki because it always takes mundane events such as writing for a school paper, cooking competitions, or cleaning garbage from a lake and turns them into spectacular events with aliens, magic powers, giant machines, ninjas, and more. Additionally, its story is structurally sound. There are clear goals, backstories, love triangles, a little bit of drama, plus a solid ending. For being a parody anime, it's more complete and better written than a lot of other anime out there. Of course, I'm referring to the 12-episode series. The 3-episode OVA, on the other hand, feels disjointed because it's meant to represent a quick look into a much larger storyline that at that point was still imaginary. The 3-episode OVA is intended to be treated like a fun popcorn flick because it doesn't really tell a story. It's just about the absurd humor and meta references. Overall, I give the OVA a 7 out of 10 for being funny, but leaving so much of the actual story behind. I give the 12-episode anime series an 8 out of 10 because I actually found it enjoyable on numerous levels, and it honestly exceeded my expectations considering how it began as just a joke. I'm not sure why anyone would watch these without seeing Genshiken, but if they happen to stumble upon them first, I think they'd enjoy the series more than the OVA because it is a complete story. Most of the people agree that the OVA is slightly more densely packed with humor. And if you're wondering when you should watch Kujibiki Unbalanced to get the most out of it and Genshiken, I would recommend watching the 3-episode OVA after the first episode, or maybe you can watch episode 1 of Genshiken, the original series, then Kujibiki OVA episode 1, then episode 2, just alternate episodes. It won't take you long, but they get to a lot of the Kujibiki references very quickly in the original Genshiken anime. As far as the series, feel free to watch that whenever you please. I watched that just recently, and I found a lot of references to the anime, and I think the next time I go and read the manga or watch the anime, I'd probably enjoy it even more, so feel free to watch the 12-episode series whenever you like. Regarding the manga, I can't really recommend that because I was only able to find one chapter of that online, and it seemed to be very similar to the 12-episode series, so I would recommend that instead. Plus, both the OVA and the 12-episode anime have a pretty good English dub to them. It's kind of ironic that there are so many great anime out there that just never got a dub, but these two joke parody anime have a pretty good dub. Moving on to the next Genshiken reference to become an anime and manga, that is Ramen Tenshi Pretty Menma. It's terrible. Don't bother. The anime is literally a slideshow. It's like 6 images with 20 minutes of voice acting. Just for the sake of being thorough, I tried to read the manga and there was a bunch of sexualized lollies, so I don't recommend that one either. I'm not sure what I expected though, after all, because Pretty Menma is a hentai game within the Genshiken universe. This brings me to the conclusion of today's lengthy review. It's been a long time since I first experienced Genshiken, and it's really meant a lot to me in my life. And actually, you may not be aware of this, but if you've been around the channel for a really long time, my old Otaku Tuesday videos were because of Genshiken. That's how I found out about the word, because I watched Genshiken dubbed before I ever really knew what it meant or anything like that. So I always had an idea of having something like Genshiken in the back of my head whenever I created various different groups to interact with you guys. I would really love to have a real-life group just like Genshiken one day. You may not know this, but this isn't even my first Genshiken video. I actually reviewed it many years ago, and I wanted to go back and improve on that video now that I've read the manga and finished all the anime, everything that there is to be Genshiken. I finished it all, so I wanted to make a better video about it so hopefully more people can enjoy its story and characters. If you've seen Genshiken, then let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section below, and I really want to know who are your favorite characters and why, because there's so many great Genshiken characters that I think everybody's going to have a different favorite. I'm looking forward to hearing all of the different answers. I also wanted to say sorry that this video is so late. I know I kept posting on Twitter about my Genshiken video, all these deadlines and stuff, but I just kept blowing past them because I didn't really understand how big of a project this video would be, because it's basically like 5 different reviews, and it is a lot of work, to be honest with you. But next week, on Friday, I will be releasing another review for Mars Red, unless something crazy comes up. It's only like 13 episodes, so it should be a piece of cake compared to something like this. So I wanted to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Friday. Have an awesome week.